All right, in this problem, we're going to be looking at the application. So let's take a look at this question. Jasmine has 35 coins in her wallet. All are nickels and quarters. If the total value of the coins is $4.35, how many nickels and how many quarters does she have? So we're going to start off by identifying our variables. So X is going to represent the number of nickels, and Y will represent then the number of quarters. So recall that nickels are 5 cents and quarters are 25 cents. So it's important for us to know the denomination of each coin, because we are going to have the denomination or the value of the coin is going to come into play with the total amount of money that Jasmine has. So notice that because the number of coins we have is going to be X plus Y will equal 35. The value that they represent is I'm going to have 5 cents for X plus the 25 cents for Y, which is then going to equal a total of $4.35. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and solve this by elimination. And so since we're doing elimination, we want to make sure we find a variable that we want to eliminate. Let's go ahead and eliminate the X. And I'm going to go ahead and take this top one and multiply by negative 0.05. So in doing so, this top equation turns into 0.05 negative X minus 0.5 Y, which equals negative 1.75. I'm going to go ahead and copy that bottom equation down. Okay, let's go ahead and add those two things together. So now notice our x's go away, and then negative 0.05 plus 0.25y is going to end up with 0.2y, which is going to equal negative or positive 2.6. So let's go ahead and divide both of these by 0.2. And notice we're going to get that y equals 13. So now we're not done, because remember, y is the number of quarters. But I know that x plus y equals 35. So x plus 13 will then equal 35. So if I subtract 13 from both sides, I should get that x equals 22. So my final answer is not that x equals 22 and y equals 13, but my final answer would be that in words, right? So complete sentence, Jasmine has 22 nickels and 13 quarters. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at the next one. So the admissions fee at the carnival is $2.50 for children, $7 for adults. On a certain day, 1,400 people attend the carnival, and the admissions totals was 5,822. How many children were in attendance? So again, let's label our variables. I'm going to write them on this side this time. So x is going to be the number of children. Y will be the number of adults. Okay, so this is telling me that that particular day we had a total of 1,400 people. Well, children plus adults together are people, so that's 1,400. Okay. We know how much revenue they made because they made 5,822 off of the admissions tickets. So a child would cost 0.25x plus y, which would be 7y, would equal 5,822. So let's go ahead and see if we can eliminate. Let's go ahead and eliminate y. We can multiply this top one by -7. So we'd end up with -7x minus 7y equals 9,800 negative. And then I would have 0.25x plus 7y equals 5,822. Okay. Notice how the 7y's would cancel out. And so we'd left with -7x plus 2.5, which is going to give me a -4.5x, which equals -9,800 minus 5,822. That's going to give me a -3,978. We're going to divide both sides by 4.5. And we see that x is then equal to 884. So this is the number of children. Well, I also know that x plus y equals 1400. So if x is 884 plus y, and that equals 1400, therefore, I'd subtract 884 from both sides. I end up with y equaling 516. So again, our problem is in words, so we should respond in words. So we would say there was a total of 884 children and 516 adults. Oops, can't spell that word. There. And that's it for that problem. All right, it took Brett 2 hours to fly from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh, a distance of 260 miles, flying into a headwind. Remember, a headwind is against the wind. Headwind speed is actual speed minus the wind speed. Following the same flight path, his return flight was 1 hour and 15 minutes. If the wind speed and direction was the same for both flights, find his speed in still air and the wind speed. So we still need 2 different variables because we're dealing with his speed in still air and his wind speed. We're going to have x is going to equal the speed in still air, and y will equal the wind speed. So let's take a look at this. It took 2 hours to fly. So here we have our time, so it's 2 hours. A distance of 260. And then we have the headwind. So one of the formulas that we have to use here is the fact that distance equals rate times time. So the distance we are traveling is 260 miles, 260. The rate at which we are flying, so this is going to come into play over here and change colors here. Or not. All right, so the rate comes from this fact right here. It's the speed minus the wind speed. So I know what the speed that I have is x minus the wind speed, which is y. So I'm going to have x minus y. The next point that I'm going to plug in is time. I was given that in one direction the time is 2 hours, so it's going to be times 2. Now that's one way. So this is on my way from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh. So I'm departing. That's what I'm doing. Now on the return flight, we're doing the same thing, except we know that the time shrunk by 1 hour and 15 minutes. Okay, so the distance stayed the same, so it's still 260. Okay, we are no longer at a head speed. We're tailwind, right? Which is the speed is actual speed plus the wind speed. Right? So then that would give us x plus y. And then that turns into the time, which is 1 hour and 15 minutes. So here we have to be careful because I think oftentimes we think 1 hour and 15 minutes is the same as 1.15. This is not true because 15 minutes is not divisible by 100. It's going to be divisible by 60. So if we think of a clock, right? So if we think of this as a clock, 1 hour and 15 minutes, that's when we're at the 3. Okay, how many 15 minutes does it make to make a whole? Well, we go from 3 to 6 to 9. So 15 minutes, 15 minutes, 15 minutes, and then 9 to 12 is another 15 minutes. So we end up with 15 times 4 to go all the way around. So that means that 1 hour and 15 minutes is the same thing as saying 1.25 because we're saying 1 hour and 1/4 of an hour. So that's what this is going to end up being. This is going to be 1.25. Okay. So now let's go ahead. Now that we have our two equations, we can go ahead and solve them. So before we do that, I think it's worth it to distribute. Or instead of distributing, we can divide out. So we just end up with the x minus y and the x plus y. I actually think that that's nicer. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to divide both it 260 by 2 and this side by 2. So we're going to end up with 260 divided by 2 gives me 130. So the first equation turns into x minus y equals 130 degree or 130. I'm going to divide this side by 1.25 and I'll divide the 260 by 1.25 to get rid of that. So then I'm left with x plus y is equal to 208. Now, notice here that I have a negative y and a positive y, so those already just go away. So I'm left with 2x is equal to 338. Divide both sides by 2. I get x equals 169. Okay. I know that so x plus y, and I know what x plus y and x minus y are going to equal. So let's go ahead and take 169, and we're going to look at this first equation here. We're going to subtract y, and that equals 130. So when I subtract both sides by 169, I'm going to end up with negative y equals negative 39. And so I divide by negative, so I end up with y equals 39. So what does this mean? So we want to make sure that we go ahead and write this out. And so we would say the speed is, so the speed in still air would be 169 miles per hour. And then the wind speed is 39 miles per hour. All right. Number 16. Marlena bought 1 2/3 pounds of French roast coffee and 3 1/8 pounds of Colombian coffee and paid $31.25. Rowan bought 2 5/12 cups of French coffee and 9/16 pounds of Colombian coffee and paid $15.15. find the cost per pound of each type of coffee. So again, here we're going to go ahead and label our variables. So I feel like I'm going to run out of space for this particular problem. So let me erase this on the sides and let's label our variables over here. So we're going to say X is going to be the amount of French roast coffee. Oh, the cost per pound. So this is going to be per pound of French roast. And then we're going to have Y is going to be the amount of money per pound of Colombian. Okay, so those are X and Y's. Let's go ahead and take a look at this one more time. So we have 1/3 of pounds of French roast coffee and 3 1/8 pounds of Colombia coffee. And we know what we paid, $31.25. Okay, so this turns into 1 2/3 of X plus 3 1/8 of Y, and that's going to equal 31.25. Okay. And so remember, our X and Y's is that price per pound, and so we're listing out the pounds. So the next one is we bought 2 5/12 plus 9/16 for $15.15. All right, so if we're going to do this through elimination, first thing I recommend that we do is that we attempt to fraction bust this. So let's take a look at these fractions and notice that, try to figure out what the least common denominator is going to be for them. So here I see 3 and I see 8. So I'm thinking 24 is going to be the smallest possible value. And then here I have 12 and 16. And I'm thinking 36 is going to be the smallest possible value. Yes. So let's multiply this first one by 24. We're going to multiply this bottom one by 36. So actually 36 does not go into 12 and 16 because I was thinking of 32 and I was thinking of 32 and 36. So let's see, 16 times 12, 92. It's going to be 48. So we're going to multiply that bottom one by 48. So when we do that, in case you don't remember how to multiply fractions, the best way that I want you to think about this is instead of dealing with mixed numbers, go ahead and deal with improper fractions. So I'm going to change 1 2/3 into an improper fraction. So 1 2/3 would become, so it's 1 times 3 plus 2. So this would be 3 plus 2, which is 5. So this is the same thing as saying 5/3. Okay. So I'm going to replace this number by 5/3. So all I'm doing is converting the improper fraction. I'm converting into improper fractions. So this is going to be 5/3. I'm going to do the same thing here for 3 1/8. So 3 1/8, it's 8 times 3, which is 24, plus 1, which gives us the 25/8. I'll do that for these other ones as well, just so that we can do some multiplication nicely. This will become 29/16, over 12. And then this would 9/16. So now let's multiply the top by 24 and the bottom by 48. So in doing that, we'd end up with 40x plus 75. Y equals 750. In the denominator, we end up with 116x plus 27y equals 727.2. So I need to pick one of these variables to get rid of. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the y variable. In order to do that, I need to think of 75 and 27. What number do they both go into? And so I'm going to multiply that top by 9. Multiply that bottom by 25. So when I do that, I end up with 360x plus 675y equals 6,750. And in the denominator, I end up with 2,900 plus or minus 675y equals negative 18,180. So we go ahead and combine these. Notice that these go away. So 300 minus 200, 2,900. That's going to give me negative 2,540. X equals negative 11,430. We're going to go ahead and divide. And doing that, we end up with x equals positive 4.5. So now we know what x equals. We're going to go ahead and plug that back into one of our equations. Let's go ahead and pick the first one. So we're going to get 5/3 times 4.5 plus 25 over 8 times y equals 31.25. Well, 5/3 plus 4.5 is 7.5 plus 25 over 8. Y equals 31.25. So we're going to go ahead and subtract 7.5 from both sides. Once we subtract, we're going to end up multiplying by the reciprocal of 25 over 8. So then we end up with y equals 7.6. Sorry, I ran out of space. So our final answer is going to be 4.5, comma 7.5. Oops. Sorry, 7.6. All right, so we would say then, in terms of making sure that we have our sentence, we would have the cost of French roast is $4.50 a pound. Per pound. The cost of Colombian is $7.60 per pound. And that would be the end of that question. All right, the last one here. So Alex invested $7,500 into 2 accounts. One is paying a 5.5% interest. The other one is paying 8% simple interest per year. His annual interest was $540. How much did he invest in each account? So we're going to say X is the amount invested at the 5%. Y would be the amount invested at the 8%. Okay, so those are two variables. We know that the amount that we invest in X and the amount we invested in Y, the total is going to be 7,500, because that's how much you invested in total, right? So you invested 7,500 into two separate accounts, so that's X plus Y. That gives us that 7,500. Okay. Now we know that interest-wise, X had an interest of 5.5%. So we're going to write that as a decimal, which will turn into 0.055 times X. So this represents, right, that percentage times the amount we invested represents the interest that has been gained, plus 8% for that Y. So then that would be 0.08Y, and that's equal to $540. I feel like it's really hard to get interest that high. So we want to go ahead and cancel out one of these variables. So let's go ahead and multiply that top one by negative 0.08. Let's get rid of the Y. So now this account turns into negative 0.08x minus 0.08y, and that's equal to 600, or negative 600, all over 0.55x plus 0.08y equals 540. Notice our y's go away, and so we're going to add up our x's, and so we end up with negative 0.25. It didn't come out very nice. So it's going to be about a 2.5, right? So it's 0.5x, and that's going to equal, that should be negative. This is going to be negative 60. Let's go ahead and divide by negative 0.025. So then we have x equals, x would equal 2,400. So if x equals 2,400, we come back over here because we know that x plus y equals 7,500. So if x is the 2,400 plus y, I'm just going to subtract the 2,400 from both sides. So we end up with y equals 5,100. So we'd say the amount invested in the account at 5.5% is $2,400, while the other account has 8%. Whoops, forgot. Has 1,100 invested. And that's it. That's it for this section.